G'day, friends and fans. Welcome to Dave Talk Stuff, Ukraine War update for the 5th of July 2026. I'm your host, the author, David Applegate, and as the war continues, I'll continue to bring news and opinions from the front. Now, using the Ukraine interactive map, we can see. Now, there was a phone call today between Putin and Trump and Zelensky. There was also a drone and missile attack. You can see they're reporting Kharkiv, Dnipro, Zaporizhia, and the Odessa port and the port south of Odessa, although they often refer to that as the Odessa port. It is part of a string of ports on the coast there. Primarily for grain, although most of Ukraine's shipping goes through those ports. Now we have continued operations in the semi-exclusion zone. However, not as many operations today, but Russia has taken territory and looks appear to be they are conducting continued operations to take what's the last of this group of settlements here in particular, but overall just continue to expand the exclusion zone. Looks like they're still trying to open up this area here and defend, or now they're trying to push into Kupiansk. As you can see, Russia's claiming to advance here in the border with LPR and Kharkiv. Kharkiv Oblast? Yeah, I think that's the Kharkiv Oblast. They dropped they bombed Kamensk, pushing, and they are pushing out towards it. Not much in the Lyman area to report. Operations continue in the Lyman area, and the race towards Kursk continues. Well, Kursk and Savansk, but I'm pretty sure most of it's just going to settle around here to begin the siege. To bring artillery within the optimum range. Now, operations to continue. The Ukrainians haven't given up on Koshnikov. The operations continue, clearing operations. The Russians haven't. The Ukrainians refused to retreat. The Russians called for a ceasefire to hand over bodies. Now, by last count, there's an estimated 1,000 dead. Now, some have it as high as 13. That might be over the last 6 months. They're saying that, there's dead in the fit. I'm not saying it's all Ukrainians either. They're just saying dead. But the Russians have put out many pictures now of them in town, going house to house. I don't know why, and you can see a lot of these are old, a day ago. Why they won't take them down? The Ukrainians, I believe, and the Russians, according to even some Ukrainian reports, they're not fighting here. They're fighting over Druzhkivka already. This pass road or pass here. The Russians are clearing out mines and unexploded ordnance, and that's why they had to bypass this field. Unexploded ordnance and mines. And the same here, these fields, all of them, unexploded ordnance and mines. That's why the Russians have bypassed it. They say it's going to take months to clear out. I believe that would be right. they're bomblets. They're dropped by drone, dropped by missile. They're the G. Initially, it was just used to be they'd get a big case, lot full of. They look like hand grenades, but they're basically do not disturb bombs. Right? They don't go off unless they're disturbed. But how they're disturbed, they could be picked up and set off a timer. They could be crushed underfoot and nothing happens, and they go off on a tank. It depends on the ordnance and how. But they scatter hundreds of these, and they're small, and they're plastic, so they're hard to find, and they get covered over and absorbed into the ground very quickly because they're out in the wild. It's not like your lawn where you're mowing it every day. That's a joke. But it's not like, your lawn. Now, Russia is stalled in some areas, of course, but in others, they've made progress. They've broken through the Ukrainian lines, and they finally admitted that. But the Russian maps don't have them as far along as the Ukrainians do. But the Russian maps also claim the Russians are up here, so there are differences. And there are other Ukrainian maps as well that have them different areas as well, closer to Runishki, for instance. There's no one map that agrees with any other map now, because it depends how often they update and if they're going to update them or not. Well, it's almost if they want to mislead as I shouldn't say they. We know who they are. The Ukrainians want to mislead the public as to the true state of the war, and I'm trying my best to bring that to you. The fighting here is almost continuous, even though there are small clashes. But the Russians have been slowly creeping in. It's mostly mine clearing, but with limited resources, and again, that's by choice. Right, the Russian economy is squeezed, but not popped. And there's a strange dichotomy going on where China is selling cheap ammunition to Russia and India is selling cheap ammunition to Ukraine. Well, India is selling bullets, although India's trade reports have them selling up to $7 billion in arms just in the last 6 months. So a lot of it went to Israel, and a lot of that was going to Israel. Some of that has been diverted to Ukraine. A lot of other purchases as well. A lot of arms purchases by Europe. Some very small amount of that is actually diverted to Ukraine. According to some data, Sweden's bought a whole army. So was Poland. Polish army is now caught up to Germany. Their tank and artillery production is now on par with France and Germany. Poland produces more artillery than both France and Germany currently. Only small amounts of that go to Ukraine. That's why Russia won't escalate. If they escalate, they're sure that one of them are going to come in. And as long as they don't escalate or cross the red line. So Putin is skating on thin ice, having Zelensky hope that Putin makes a mistake, and that's why he's provoking Putin in many ways. And I think one of the things that I do notice, I think the more Zelensky lies is deliberate. He's trying to provoke Putin. That's why he's trying to de-Russify Ukraine, to provoke Putin. Everything he does. Okay, Putin's living in Zelensky's head. Zelensky's this little man who just can't let go that someone achieved better than him, so he's going to tear them down. Honestly think Zelensky somehow thinks he's chosen, but just because he answered a casting call from Komolinsky and Soros, that he's somehow special. You're an office manager for an organisation that is quite frankly doomed. They're going to be a victim of their own circumstances because they can't help meddling in other people's affairs, and they eventually will run into someone who just won't give a shit. Rightly or wrong, it doesn't matter. When you then meddle that much, morality no longer matters to people. They're just sick of your meddling. People want to make mistakes and live their own lives. They don't want Daddy Soros. And they're sick of the American government protecting him. They're sick of Israel because they protect people like and produce people like Soros. They keep talking about their survival when they would be far better off with the treaties offered under Trump than any offer in the last 50 years. Same with Ukraine. But see, this is the problem with people who always think they know better. They go, oh, you're meddling in our affairs. Well, you're meddling in ours constantly. All we're trying to do is stop. You meddled. You came to us. You asked for help. We told you what to do. And then you turned around and shoved the middle finger in our face and said, no, all we want is weapons and money. We want a victory. That's not how wars work. Wars don't decide who's right or wrong. Just because you put on a white hat doesn't mean you're going to win the war. And Biden cluck and run around clucking, oh, if I was still in office, we would have a Ukrainian victory. You never did anything in the 4 years you were there. All you did was give them weapons. And what did you achieve? You lost thousands of square kilometres of land to the Russians when you could have only lost half of that and got a settlement. Putin was ready to accept your settlement, and then Biden and Zelensky said, no, I want all or nothing. Biden should have shot him on the spot, but Biden's a coward. Biden never did the right thing, even when his life depended on it, because all Biden cares about is feathering his own nest. And I'm sick of Democrats justifying it by saying, oh, Biden's just taking care of his family, when he took a $17 million book deal. Where's my $17 million book deal? You keep talking about equality, then everybody should get a $17 million book deal by your logic. Or everyone should get a J.K. Rowling book deal, $1 billion. You keep talking about equality. You don't mean it because you don't know the meaning of the word. But we have probably another 1,000 dead. And all Ukraine is going to do is, and they have, talk about their victory. What victory? Oh, they conducted a long-range strike into Russia. One missile got through out of 10, and they call that a victory. This is the example difference, right? Both sides will claim victory now. Russia has, right, claimed victory that they just stopped a massive attack. And Ukraine says, look at us, we conducted a massive attack, aren't we great? If Ukraine keeps escalating, Russia could escalate better, harder. They won't for now because of Poland and all the other countries. That doesn't make Ukraine great. It makes them cowards. They're that little child hiding. They're that little stone-throwing brat who hides behind bigger kids' legs and throws stones at people when they're not looking. And then nanas. You know, they dare you. dead. This is the problem when society decides everything has to be based on size and aggression rather than actual provocation. When you took away the rules of provocation, when you decided the left had this arbitraries of morality, you ceded that ground and you turned the world upside down. Why? Because you said, oh, it's in the Bible, it must be true. We must let it happen because it's in the Bible. You never stop to think the Bible's warning you not to let these things happen and what would happen if you did let them happen? You ever stop to think, don't let these things happen, don't let these things come to pass and everything will be fine? No. You've been so brainwashed into obedience and trust the bejesus that you won't defend yourselves. Because you think, oh, I'm only here for a short time, I'll just obey God and everything will be fine. Really? Ask God what he wants you to do with your life. He's already told you in the Bible, but yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? All these people run around like chooks with their heads cut off. They're not using their brain. They might as well. But again, we can't save fools, can we? You cannot save the fool, the willfully ignorant. Those who always think they know better. Those who always have to meddle. They cannot be saved. Like, you can't save Ukraine. That's what people don't get. Same with Afghanistan or what. You could have saved Vietnam. They wanted you to save them. All you had to do was do the right thing the first time. They wouldn't have been hardcore communists. But no, the meddlers just couldn't let things go. And again, it's a failure. A constant process of failure. Now, before I continue, this channel is sponsored by you, the viewing audience. Empire Valves, that's one word, empirevalves.myshopify.com. Your one-stop shop for enchanted treasures based on my writing. Please and thank you. Yeah, so Russia attacks Ukraine with a fairly sizable amount of drones and missiles for building up to a bigger attack. Nearly 300 clashes over the last day. That's almost twice. Probably, yeah, almost twice over twice the average for some months. Russia isn't. Yeah, the Russian escalation, like I said, they're undergoing rotations, which means they are consolidating their positions. Well, Zelensky had a call with Trump, and Zelensky congratulated him on the 250th anniversary of US independence and had a very good phone call. And the prospect to put an end to this war. Yeah. But Zelensky always thinks he's going to get his way, so he's never going to tell the truth. So why bother? Why bother reading all the article? It's just Zelensky kissing himself, hoping that Trump will never correct him. Because we know what happened last time he went to the White House. Got spanked by J.D. Vance for being an ungrateful brat, for never even saying thank you. You know how they always talk about, oh, Trump's going to be a dictator and stay in office after his term. Zelensky does. That's exactly what Zelensky does. Their boy Zelensky does. See, a lot of people have never learnt this lesson. Whenever someone points a finger, look how many fingers are pointed back, right? They are always, whether it's Bernie Sanders, Vladimir Zelensky, George Soros, they're all trying to distract you from them. You're upset And I know there's a lot of people upset with USAID cut, but a lot of that money was going to organisations run by George Soros, who was keeping half the money for himself. Trillions. A huge financial network of which Jeffrey Epstein was a part, of which millions of people are a part. So you have all these influencers across America who receive Soros money now crying that they're cut off. Because Soros wasn't giving you them his money. He was giving you your taxpayer money. He was giving you debt. Now, the Russian armed forces, are on the offensive. So they've seized control of some towns. As a result, maybe tomorrow some of these towns will still be in Ukrainian hands. They've just because they established control today doesn't mean they're going to be there tomorrow. This has happened before. But the Russians are pushing. They realise that they make the Ukrainians panic. They race into towns, establish fire points, release fire on Ukrainian positions. Because the Ukrainians can't occupy every town either. And then the Russians, when the Ukrainians come, the Russians retreat and fire on the Ukrainians. It's a trap. And I've seen this happen before. Both sides have done it to each other. Now, another thing Russia does is to provoke Zelensky and claim they've captured a town, just so Zelensky says, no, I don't. And then the next day, Russia takes it and then says, yes, we did. It's this game of getting under each other's skin. And I'm telling you, it's a very Russian thing to do. And both Zelensky and Putin are Russians. Now, again, there's no point in telling you what happened between the Putin-Trump phone call because the media is just going to say, Trump submitted to his master. The Liberals, they always make stuff up. Most of these phone calls are very boring. You go back and look at all the last big exciting phone call is when Khrushchev called JFK's bluff. Russia puts out a claim to have created the world's largest bomb. JFK said that's impossible. You're not capable, of producing anything more than 10 megaton. So called him up and says, your satellite's coming over, right? Yeah. JFK, don't respond. Just says, what about it? And Khrushchev says, watch the horizon. And puts the phone down. Doesn't hang up, just puts the phone down. And then waits. Now, no one knows exactly what explosive, but yeah. So they watched the horizon on the town where the satellite was coming over. They retasked the satellite was blinded, and then the next day they see it in the film reel. The bomber, world's largest bomb, 7 times larger than anything Russia's ever produced. Yeah. So you never underestimate, and so this has always had America on edge since then, because you can't underestimate the Russians. Now, around the world, inventiveness is dying. And right now, China and India are playing against each other, trying to control Russia, to try and buy up Russian businesses. Because Russia's one of the few countries outside the US that still has some creativity left in it, some inventiveness left in it. Inventiveness is dying for 2 reasons. you don't read enough books, and you don't have enough free time. The powers to be are cycling you over with the same recycled garbage over and over again. The Liberals have done this for centuries. Liberals settled into the same Greek plays over and over again until along came Shakespeare. He broke the Liberal establishment. Then what happens after his death? The Liberal establishment settled in with all the Shakespearean plays, and still to this day try to keep you settled in with Shakespearean plays. But it's not working. So the modern era, the MCU, dies. All empires die quicker because people don't want baked beans on toast every day, or gruel every day, or whatever it is they plan to mass produce to replace meat. And see, Ukraine was supposed to be a food shortage. The problem is hardly any countries have implemented environmental controls and therefore didn't cut their fertilizer production. They always expected someone else to do it. But food is at an all-time high for production, and that's with Ukraine and a net negative on food production. Now, Russia is claiming mercenaries, about 16,500 mercenaries in Ukrainian ranks. That's well down from the 100,000 reported at the beginning of last year. Ukrainian drones are routinely found outside of Ukraine. Seeing there. Counting on escalation of the conflict, the EU and Kiev want to provoke Russia into annihilating Ukraine to justify a war against Russia, to annihilate Russia for revenge. That's why they have you all singing "Glory to Ukraine," like a bunch of brainwashed little robots. Why don't you defend your country? If you can't defend your country, right? Why aren't you? If you're so glorious about, if you think Ukraine is all that, why aren't you there? Because you don't, do you? You just want to make other people feel your pain. Well, the reason why you're in pain is because you're always trying to make others feel pain. You never stop. You never let go of your pain. You never realise pain is temporary. It's just a lesson to basically go, this individual. But most of the pain Liberals feel is the pain of not getting their way, because they're that obsessed with perfection and believing they are perfect and that they can implement God's perfect plan. God implements God's plan. You do whatever you have to do, but you do not implement God's plan. You are not a meddler. You are not meant to meddle in other people's affairs. In the past, it would get you killed. That's why you're so obsessed with safety. Because eventually you will run into someone who either wants to meddle in your life and will lead to conflict. It's the cowardice of the Liberal establishment to always get the government to defend them. That's why they pose as artists and actors and steal so much wealth for themselves. You should be paying more than $2 for a movie. The writers and producers should get more money than the actors. The actors are nothing but clowns. They're greedy and selfish, and you worship them only because they're pretty. Now, like I said before, Ukraine launched a huge attack and it failed. It failed to create a provocation. It failed, and it was a HIMARS that got through, sorry, not a Flamingo. Neither here nor there, but Ukraine wants to crow that they had a successful attack long range. Because that's what happens when you're so obsessed with your own prestige. It's ultimately what the Liberal establishment is it not? It's all about their prestige. I'm an actor. I'm educated. Well, Billy Irish was attacking James Woods, calling him a uneducated rube. James Woods is more educated than her. Billie Irish didn't even finish high school. She bought her degree online with her parents' money. Yeah, she didn't. She didn't even finish high school. She bought it. Her degree is actually in. Yeah. So that's the problem when you think you're talent. I mean, that's the problem in it. The media hype is what you watch. There are lots of talented people out there, millions of them. But the media chooses a few based on their allegiances to the establishment, or in this case, more and more nepotism, and they hype them. And out there, the dumb people believe the hype. Billie Irish isn't talented. It's her brother who wrote all those songs. He's the talent. She's just the mouth for the moves. She's the puppet. But unfortunately, most people just go, "Oh, Billy." Anybody could sing those songs, and probably better than Billy. Millions could. Just don't believe the hype. That's why I don't care about Taylor Swift. She full flavor. The songs. She's nothing but a siren. Now, this is an interesting natural phenomenon. Fire tornadoes. It's when a fire reaches, I think, around 500 degrees. It creates its own wind. Now, I think this is, by the looks of it, there is a broken gas pipe or something that is on fire. And it could be an old gas pipe. So whatever gas is in there is going to burn off. They probably don't have anything to smother it. It's probably too big or too hot to get near. But look at that car, it's distorted. So that fire is way over 500 degrees. Look at the car, it's distorted. They're pulling out. Now it's not actually the car that's distorted, it's the air. It's the heat shimmering. But the Chernobyl zone is so dried out, the lack of water, and then it's only going to spread. It's going to the Chernobyl exclusion zone is going to start dragging Ukraine down because absorbs. It's now going to start absorbing water, and because it's dry, that water is going to evaporate. It's never going to pool, so it'll spread. Now, Russia proposes a ceasefire to hand over bodies. Ukraine has yet to respond. They most likely will when they make it their idea. But with over 1,000 dead Ukrainians allegedly lying in the fields, and the last 80 defenders wouldn't surrender. Yesterday, Russia's, and still probably today, going house to house. But Ukraine hasn't suspended military operations in the area and are probably right now prepared. I don't know if they're going to launch a counteroffensive, but yeah, to engage the Russians somewhere around this point. Khosrokovia was nice and beautiful. It was a green, very green city. Lots of big old trees. It was very beautiful. It was an old style Russian town. Not many very tall buildings on the old side. On the industrial side, it's quite modern. Ukraine had, Ukraine was building up a nice little industry for itself, but it was never enough because it was all built on debt Ukraine couldn't pay. Ukraine wanted to advance, and that's what they're trying to do now is use the war to become a weapons manufacturer. a powerhouse, just like they were in the Soviet Union. They want they want a seat at the table and have Operation Sky Shield, where we protect you from Russian missiles that never come. So it's like the Elephant Stone. If anybody knows the story of the Elephant Stone, P.T. Barnum, biggest scam of all time. So while Ukrainian reports 300 combat operations, remember there's multiple combat operations per point of impact, and lots of these are not taken off for days. This is getting frustrating, but that's the state of the war. And Putin is going to pretty much make Russia great again. That's just like Ukraine wants to be great again. Though Ukraine was never great, it was part of something that was once considered great, but it doesn't know. And I'm not going to say Ukraine's place is under Russia's thumb either. It just doesn't know how to be an independent country, and what value it had as an independent country. And even the Poland and others are all tired of the EU. But at the moment, the people are addicted to the EU because the EU is just pumping out money. So you can't blame Ukraine for wanting to be part of that cash handout now, can you? But the EU, like all establishments, they ran out of daddy's money. And that's why they hate Trump, because he won't give them money to play love me games and hand out lots of money. But influence peddling, at the end of the day, is just that, peddling. You're buying love. You're just a John, and Ukraine's the prostitute. And as soon as the prostitute's done with you, you're the one of no value. And Ukraine will just find the next sucker. For now, Poland and the other countries around them don't know what to do because they realise that Ukraine is just using them. But for now, they're using Ukraine against their own people, I suppose, to boist the military spending for prestige. Because there seems to be something about politicians and tanks in particular that have them all drooling. And it's not a right wing thing, it's a left wing thing too. It's just human nature. Something about tanks has them all lining up to stand with the newest tank, talk about their prestige, how they're going to keep them safe, how they keep the people safe. And I guess that's what's it, right? They wanted the US Air Force in Europe so they could tell the people we're keeping you safe. Because ultimately, they just want to pacify the masses into their grave. Take as much off them as they can along the way. But it's all getting out of control, and now Europe is implementing a bigger deportation program than Trump. I think JD Vance responded by saying about time. But yeah. So thanks for watching. That's the state of the war. Confusing as it is, and as strange and bizarre it is, I'm going to remind you, no one's winning this. No one's walking away from this clean. The sooner it ends, the shorter the pain lasts after. It's a band-aid now. It's a festering wound. It needs sunlight. Rip off that band-aid. But Ukraine doesn't know how to let go because they don't want the people, they want the territory. Although they'd love to subjugate the people of the Donbass, pose for the cameras, tell everyone how they liberated the Donbass and how we're here to save you, and then send in the secret police to kill 100,000 or 200,000 people for collaboration, and then probably kill another 100,000 for being members of the police and DPR security. Hopefully, it probably won't even matter that the majority of people who are pro-Russian have probably left if ever there is. But for now, millions of people are looking to Russia and saying, "Don't give in. Don't give in to the threats. We can put up with this. Ukraine shells us. We don't care. We're going to stay with Russia." So whatever Ukraine did prior to 2022 was so bad, the people of Donbass don't want to be part of Ukraine again. And they're willing. They were offered their lives several times in pleas to be armed against Ukraine fully. But Putin doesn't want a war and escalation in Ukraine because they know what happens. And you don't want to see what happens. But China and India, they think they're going to be the next world power and they need to control Russia to do that. That's what you should be more worried about. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please support the channel. Support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. And if you don't believe me, look at the thoughts of Xi Jinping. He doesn't have secrets. He tells everybody what he wants. He looked Trump in the eye and said, "I'm going to be master of the world." And Trump laughed at him. And Xi Jinping put his hand on a tree and said, "China is like this tree. It's just going to grow and grow. It's going to outlast you. It's going to outlast everyone." And Trump put his hand on a tree and said, "We'll see." So believe me when I tell you that Xi Jinping does not have secrets. He makes a point not to have secrets. Everyone knows his foibles. The only thing, he does have secrets, all his mistakes, and his wealth, and his daughter that he hides in Australia. But everybody knows. And she's now in hiding because she's under investigation by Interpol for money laundering. But that's the way it goes. That's the way it is. The majority don't want to be told. The majority want to find out for themselves. But this is one of those things where they just haven't worked it out. And I don't know why. They can let other influences into their head. But when I tell them the truth, they're just scared. So you tell me, why are people so afraid of the truth when it will set them free? Bye for now.